The United States moved from isolation to intervention, and we talked about it in our last Little On Demand segment. There were a number of reasons for this. One of the major reasons was because the British controlled the trade routes. They had a blockade around Germany. This becomes important again because as the United States begins to trade with Britain, the Germans were trying to overcome the blockade, and they developed a new terrifying weapon known as the submarine, the underwater boat. The submarine was going to be very important. They followed a policy of unrestricted submarine warfare. They basically blew up any ship within the radius of, it's around coastal Britain. So anything that was getting into Britain would be destroyed by these submarines. A terrifying weapon when there's no radar or really no defense against it. The Germans really made a mistake when they blew up the Lusitania. This was a British passenger ship, and there was about 120 or so Americans on board. The Germans argued that they had the right to blow up the ship because it was carrying supplies for the British, and it turns out that it was. The British didn't acknowledge this, though, and Americans were killed by the Germans on this British ship, and the Americans got very upset. Woodrow Wilson, the president at this time, was able to get some concessions from the Germans to keep us out of war. In fact, he runs for re-election after the Lusitania incident, saying he kept us out of war. However, the Americans were very upset. The unrestricted submarine warfare ended for about a year. It comes back later. The Zimmerman Note is also very important. After the Lusitania incident, after about a year, the Germans want to break the blockade again. They begin using the subs. They also send a note to Germany. They send a note to Mexico stating that if Mexico attacks the United States, that the Germans will support any Mexican gains that they had. You can see how the Mexican Cession incident in the Mexican War, which was only about 70 years prior to this, was still haunting the Mexican-American relationship. And lastly, Woodrow Wilson did want to get in on the war because he wanted to, quote-unquote, make the world safe for democracy, meaning that he wanted to set up a situation where in the future these wars wouldn't pop up anymore. He wants to be part of the negotiations to end the war. So about 3 years into the war, we actually get into it. Woodrow Wilson had a document called the 14 Points, which were 14 ideas that would prevent a future war from happening again and make the world safe for democracy. So when you add all this stuff up together, the United States gets involved in World War I fairly late in the game.